everybody. Really excited to have Dave Grant on, president at Nasuni. We really have an awesome topic today, transitioning from CMO to CRO to president. So certainly has his hands on all aspect of the go-to-market engine. So really appreciate you making the time today.
Happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
All right. And we're sponsored by Sandler today, who's the sales training sponsor of Sales Community. So certainly thank you to Sandler. And I think you've got a little familiarity with Sandler, right?
Yeah, we've used them in the past. Yeah.
Awesome. And also brought to you by Sales Community. So for those that are members, thank you very much. For those that are not, Tucker just posted a free link that you can use to get access to some great content that we have. And shout out to Tucker. Thanks for your help behind the scenes as also. So by way of introduction, Dave lives with his family in Holliston, which is I know from having lived there myself, can be a big commute, which a commute doesn't really come across these days, but sounds like you're old school, leave early and stay and leave late.
Yes, sir. It's the only way to do it. I can't deal with traffic these days. The patience level's gone. So yeah, it's a bit of a hike down here to Seaport, but beautiful office makes it worth it.
Awesome. And he's got two teenagers, son and daughter, 16 and 14. Happily married for 24 years. So it's interesting with a lot of the leaders that we have on here. There's, I think, something to be said for having strong partners and long marriages. So I'll stop at that before I say something I'm not supposed to say. But certainly kudos there for sure.
We want to talk politics next?
Yeah, there you go. And we met, we think probably around 15 or 17 years ago when you were at Destone, and certainly lots of mutual friends and connections. And you're really highly regarded. And one of my last memories, I think I was trying to recruit you somewhere for a CMO job. And then Peter McKay, who's the current CEO of Nasuni, called me on speakerphone with you and said, "Hey, Randy, back off." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Blah, blah, blah. And then you're there and you said, "Okay, I'm gonna go work here." I'm like, "Okay, you won." So
that was awesome. I'll never forget that. Yeah, Paul Flanagan, a CEO here, dialed you right away and said, "Leave me alone."
So great. So some other nice intro comments that we have. So from Peter McKay, who you know well and worked with, I think, Destone, VMware, and Veeam too a little bit. I have lots to say about Dave. Great enterprise market mind. He was the best product marketing person I've ever worked with and has grown into an amazing go-to-market leader. Dave, unlike lots of other execs, is able to balance the need for strong execution and tactics in the short term and strong strategic / long-term thinking. No one does it better than Dave. So pretty cool there. And of course, Paul Flanagan, the current CEO, great leader for sure, says, as our president, Dave has an extraordinary ability to effectively go across all aspects of our business and ensure that all functions are working in unison to accomplish our company's goals, and certainly exceeding the goals really well. He is an excellent leader, and his work ethic is unmatched, which is a lot coming from Paul, who's a workhorse for sure.
Yes.
Now, if we could just teach him to stay upright on his mountain bike. So I guess you took a little fall on Sunday, tore your MCL, and last year you broke a rib.
Yes, sir. I'm too old. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, fast cars, fast bikes, like to run. And I had a bit of a spill Sunday, tore the MCL. Yeah, too old, as my wife says, to be doing this stuff. But got to have an outlet, right? You got to have an outlet. Work hard, you got to play hard.
Exactly. Yes, I got a few things on me as well. And then Peter Grester, your current CRO. Dave has a unique blend of growth stage experience and large scaled out tech company experience and is equally comfortable operating in either environment. He cares about the culture and builds highly aligned teams with common goals. He is personally humble and will elevate everyone who brings a good idea, but is also fiercely competitive and knows how to execute a rare combination that builds loyalty and inspires trust in the team. So very cool there. And then one you may not expect, Ratmir, who's a longtime, I'll say, owner of Veeam. Yes, Dave is a great go-to-market leader with awesome experience and track record, and was a huge help to our success at Veeam. So I'll make sure you get those, and you can pin them on your refrigerator.
Please do. They're some pretty impressive people, so I appreciate the kind words.
Well done. Obviously, you've done great by them. So Jumping into our questions here. So you went to St. Mary's University, who people may not be familiar with, up in Halifax. And your first job after undergrad was at WordPerfect?
You got it. I was a sales engineer out pitching box software. Half your community may not even know what WordPerfect was, but it was a word processor back in the day. And I used to have to go to Best Buy, and some of these stores are no longer, and pitch people why they should be using a digital version of a word processor. So, yeah, significantly dating myself, but it was cool to get right hands-on knowledge of customer needs and how to pitch on your feet to people that really don't want to hear from you.
Awesome. And then maybe quickly kind of go through your impressive career from there.
Yeah, I went the track of product management and marketing, product marketing. From there, I left the sales engineer role and kind of took what I learned there. And then, was fortunate enough to land in some situations where people kept giving me more as a young professional, and became a VP of marketing, so the full stack at a security company called Watchfire that Peter McKay, as you mentioned, was brought in as the CEO. And that was in 2000, and he moved me down to Boston from Canada. So I was up in Ottawa at the time, and he was responsible for moving me down here, and I'm thankful for that. And then I just kept going through the ranks and became a CMO at Watchfire. Then we sold that company to IBM, did a kind of a stint there in a director of marketing role. Then we started working together again at Destone as a CMO. And then I went to VMware. We were acquired by VMware, and I got I was lucky enough to then work with, as you know, a pretty impressive company across go-to-market. So I saw what RevOps does really well, what sales structures, really good enterprise sales, and then came to Nasuni with Paul, and it's been great. So I started as a CMO, but helping Paul round out the sales side with the CRO role. And then about 2 years ago, Paul and the board decided to make a president role where I have all go-to-market functions, so sales, marketing, customer success, and business development. So think of it as, Paul likes to put it, Dave's responsible from lead to all the way through to use and making sure customers are happy. So
there you go.
Quite the journey.
Also known as one throat to choke.
One throat, exactly. Exactly.
That's great. And for those watching along or listening, feel free to post any comments or certainly any questions for Dave, and we'll do our best to get to those for sure. So Nasuni, amazing company, obviously great round just recently done, but tell us more about Nasuni.
Yeah, probably not the right thing to say as a recovering CMO, but maybe the best kept secret in infrastructure. We took a little different approach than most over the last 5 years. We built what we believe to be a solid company, both financially and culturally, without a lot of the the unicorn style approach. So we didn't spend a ton on branding and awareness and going out and doing big rounds of funding at high valuations. We decided to do the kind of the old school way of building a profitable, good growth, but not crazy growth, not too far ahead of our skis company. And so we're a SaaS company headquartered here in Boston, but offices in London, Cork, Ireland, and also in North Carolina. And we are modernizing enterprise file storage with a hybrid cloud approach. So essentially think of the NetApps, the Dells of the world. We're modernizing those systems for the cloud world. So software business approaching about 600 employees. You can see from some of the blogs we put out there, we hit 100 million of ARR 2 years ago. We've grown 30% consistently every year since, so you can kind of gauge where we are financially. But it's been a fun run, and we've built something special here. It's like we can get into some of the statistics around the financials and retention and things, but we did it a little different. So I bet you half the people that are listening probably never even heard of Nasuni, unfortunately.
There you go. Oh, that's certainly impressive. And you're also, from a sales model, you're 100% partner through the channel, right?
We are. From day one, we have been. Now we're traditional enterprise top-down sales motion. So we do have enterprise field reps that do a lot of the enterprise sale, but then work with the partners to influence the deals and fulfill the deals for sure.
Gotcha. And then you kind of have some different flavors of the kind of hyperscale cloud partners, as well as in some of the traditional kind of channel VAR partners.
Yeah, so the unique thing about what we do is we co-sell with Microsoft, AWS, and Google. So we require the end customer to actually have cloud object storage in the back end, and then our platform sits on top of it. Our service sits on top of that. So it's a unique win-win for the hyperscalers. So when we sell a deal to Mattel, the cloud provider that Mattel chooses wins as well, because we drag along object storage and we drag along some compute as well. So there's a nice synergy there with the field teams at the hyperscalers.
Well, that's great. So obviously, a lot's going really well, but any things that are kind of particular challenges these days?
How about branding? I just told you we're probably the best kept secret. It's a busy market, right? If you weren't one of those companies over the last 3 years that took the route of unicorn status, going out and building, getting high valuations and getting the buzz, it was hard to compete on the branding side. And even now, with AI, not that we don't have some relevance there, but that's sucking up a lot of the air, right, that's out there. So trying to establish, a brand perception, and we're battling legacy vendors that have been doing this for 30 years. So we're going in and trying to convince an infrastructure buyer that it's time to modernize your NetApp and move to the cloud. And that reputation is important. So we do put a lot of focus on, obviously, the traditional routes of analysts, but where your previous point is really important is we rely on our hyperscale partners and our channel partners to give us that kind of relevance and reputation, if that makes sense.
Oh, awesome. And with your growth, presumably you've got some positions that you're recruiting for?
Yeah, a couple come always hiring. You should always be hiring, always networking for good talent. So if anybody wants to join an incredible culture here at Nasuni, down here in the Seaport, an awesome office, specifically a worldwide director of sales development. So we've gotten ourselves to this point, as I said, 100 plus million of ARR, building lots of good pipe, but now we need someone to take it up a notch. We believe we have the potential with the addressable market we have in front of us. Some people say it's anywhere from 20 to 30 billion. The network attached storage market, we believe now is the time to really take us from the 100 plus million to the billion plus. We could be a standalone publicly traded company, and we need to get there. So we need a leader that can come in and help us build out a global sales development function. So if any great sales development leaders are out there, if you know of anybody, I would appreciate it. But always hiring field sales reps. We're looking for partner reps right now. Lots of roles in customer success as well.
Awesome. And what would you say is special about the culture?
I think Paul Flanagan, obviously our CEO and a mentor to me over the last 5 years, I think puts it best when he says, you take care of your employees, they take care of customers, and everything else follows. And it sounds easy, but it's not in practice. And I think what we have here is a very strong financial position in the company, right? As I mentioned, we've passed that, early stage. We're on solid footing. We're EBITDA positive. We have a 30% consistent growth rate over the last 5 years. We have a 98.7% retention rate. So we have happy customers that don't leave. We have phenomenal business metrics. We have a great size of our TAM, as I mentioned. But really what makes us special is the transparency and the integrity we have as a team. Again, I say that I think a lot of people will say that, and it's hard to prove it. And what I say to people like Peter Gresta and Michael Sotnick, as Simza here, all these new people I've hired, is I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to experience it for yourselves. You can do all your homework you want. You can check me out, you can check Paul out, you can check the company out, but you're gonna have to experience it for yourselves. And let me just give you one perfect example of transparency. Paul sends a note to the board at the end of every quarter saying how we did. That exact same email goes to the entire company. So the level of transparency I've never seen, good, bad, and the ugly. But everybody knows what we're in for, and we just have a fun culture. There's really no assholes here, and there won't be, because we won't have it. It's a very teaming environment. So we think it's something special. I think if you get to know us and get to interview with us, you'll find the same.
Gotcha. All right, you got a good territory job for me?
You going back to carrying a bag? Yes. Always New England. New England's a good patch.
There you go. All right. And so getting on to our title topic, so your awesome experience starting off kind of product management, CMO, CRO, and now president. one of the several unique things about you that I always found on the CMO side of things, that you were actually, I'll say, sales friendly, but it wasn't just kind of the marketing aspect of things. You kind of had that view into sales, and CROs, some of your biggest fans. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from, Randy. I always had some empathy, I think, for sales. I actually didn't come from it. My father wasn't a salesman. I wasn't, although he was an entrepreneur, so maybe I saw what he had to do to build a small business. But I think it's more common sense to me that I could never understand marketers that didn't feel like they needed to be in the trenches with the customers, with the salespeople to do their job better. And so for me, we termed it smarketing. I think myself and Brian McDonough, Brian's the CRO over Traceable. He was a sneak. He was a CRO with me for a couple of gigs. We came up with that concept of smarketing. I just felt like, these marketers that would say I succeeded because I generated pipeline, and then, salespeople aren't hitting their quotas, didn't make any sense to me. It also didn't make any sense to me is how could you understand your market to market to them if you weren't out in the field with folks. So I think that's always been something that I just try and push my team to do. At VMware, I established MBOs that had their product marketers. They had to be in the field at least a certain percentage of the time. And yeah, one of my proudest accomplishments through my career is that if you ask me to name off some references, I would name every CRO I've ever worked for. Brian McDonough at Traceable, Robert Morellis at VMware, James Glover, Peter McKay, as you mentioned, he's the all-time sales professional. So, it seems pretty obvious, but I think a lot of marketers get caught in the branding side, metrics side, and don't roll up their sleeves on the sales side as much as they should.
Yeah, very, very well said. I mean, I hear a lot of CROs, the marketing the company is off on the numbers, and of course the marketing dashboard is green. You have MQLs, which are all great, but then the sales leaders are sitting there saying, well, MQL is great, but what's it doing to turn into an SQL and something that's really trying to add value? How or why do you think there's that gap? Because you think obviously from our side you think it's just so obvious, but
I think the gap, it does seem obvious, except for I think what happens is, marketing, unfortunately, is constantly in this. I equate it to a little bit of the complex around justifying the spend, because as you know, outside of R&D spend and other labor spend, the marketing is the biggest incremental spend that you can finger on in most orgs. So I think CMOs are constantly trying to justify. They feel that chip that I got constantly justifying, and they might get lost a little bit in trying to say, hey, it's not my fault, it's their fault because I'm generating top of the funnel, rather than really dig in and find out why it's not panning out into deals. So, I think we could all do better there, though. I think, from the top down, making sure that those marketers aren't always under that constant pressure to just show some fake ROI, which oftentimes it is just, as you say, vanity metrics, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If you're putting up MQLs and it's not closing, who cares?
Yeah, right. Totally. So then those skills then were, kind of amazing then as you transition into a CRO, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I guess. I think you'd have to ask people. Again, I surrounded myself with as many of them network. I think networking, something I give advice to people now that I never heeded to myself. Everyone always said, network. I never did. I never took the time to do it. I was too busy. I was just running for the next promotion. And I didn't consciously build a network. I think I built one hopefully just by reputation and by being a good teammate. But I used my network a lot when I first took that CRO job on to tap into those people I mentioned earlier, to ask their opinions on things or to even, engage them with consulting. So I think, I'm a curious person. I like to learn. So I think it was a bit of that. But yeah, I think what Paul and I discussed when making that transition was, listen, there might be folks on the team that don't love the fact that you've never ran a sales organization before, but I think you're going to be able to get them past that with your attitude, the way you bring teams together. I like teams. I grew up playing lots of sports. I'm very competitive, as Pete said, and I think team translates into what goes on in the workplace. And as long as you're a good teammate, most of it, the rest of it plays out.
Totally. All right. And we have a question from Shannon. She asked, congrats on your new growth funding. What are you most looking forward to with this investment and amazing valuation?
Yeah, thank you. So we weren't actively looking for funding, but timing was right. As I said, sound fundamentals on the financial side. We believe it's a huge market. We were approached by some late stage private equity folks like Vista Equity Partners, they're one of the largest in the business, as you probably all know. Over 90 portfolio companies, I think up to 100 billion of management now. And so, we got what we thought was a great fair valuation in this market at 1.2 billion, and decided that now was the time to partner with someone like Vista who could help us take us to the next level. So Vista led the majority investment in the company. KKR and TCV joined in as well, which hopefully everybody knows those three vendors.
Yeah,
high quality vendors, partners to be working with. So what we're looking forward to the most is the expertise that they bring. When you think about the fact that they have over 90 plus in their portfolio alone of Vista, KKR, X amount more, just that expertise as we scale, as we go from 150 to 2 to 500 million to a billion. There's a lot of things we don't know, and that's what I'm looking most forward to. Is these firms have done a really nice job of creating centers of excellence in their departments. So marketing, sales development, customer success, finance, and so we're going to tap into that as quickly as possible.
Great. So thanks for that, Shannon. And from Rodrigo, we're talking about international expansion. So maybe talk about your international growth plans, and then maybe finish off on South America or Brazil.
Yeah, very good question. We've been, as I said earlier, we've been a conservative, I call it East Coast conservative versus West Coast crazy growth. We've been more conservative on expansion, kind of wanted to nail it before we scale it. And so we have gone into Europe, as I said, London and Cork, Ireland, mainly in England, DACH regions. But now, that is another thing I should have answered Shannon previously. When you think about the growth vectors from here, we're going to need to do geographic expansion. We think we have new product expansion we could do. There's some M&A we could possibly do with this new investment and this new partner. So that's definitely on the list.
Oh, awesome. And then South American market as well, correct?
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And then now kind of transitioning, so CMO, CRO, and then kind of this president role. It's always something that gets debated, right? So you have this, maybe church and state, CMO, CRO role, but then having kind of all those functions roll under you, as well as some others with the BD and the customer success. I mean, that just has to really help you, the team operate really as a team as opposed to separate self-serving stovepipes.
Yeah, that was the goal. Is that just think of the simple brass tacks of a week to week engagement, staff meetings. It's those 5 functions talking through the things you just discussed. Hey, how's pipeline looking? We're heavy on top of funnel, but we're not progressing. Why do you think that is? Just having the people in the room, or Pete saying, hey, I need help on this large enterprise deal, and my VP of PS professional services is right there saying, yeah, I can help you on that. Here's being that glue and the bridge across all those functions, I think is smart. Now, oftentimes the CEO will want to do that, but in Paul's case, he thought we could divide and conquer. And I think that comes down to the relationship that you have with the CEO and the partnership you have. That where you're better suited, and they know where they're better suited, and there's a trust there that you're going to do it, but you're going to do it in concert with the rest of the org and with engineering, because that's important as well. The last thing you want to do is build not just stovepipes within go-to-market, but stovepipes within the company. I think one of the things that we've done well here is build, go-to-market culture, whether I call it marketing. There's a sign over on my desk here I'm going to go get.
All right.
That we have all around the office called Everybody Owns Pipeline. That's everywhere. So,
nice.
we try and show people that, the customer success person that picks up the phone and gives that customer a great customer experience, who then expands more, and we have 118% NRR expansion rates, and refers us to another vendor, is building pipeline. And so, I think it's really important to try and get the whole org around that concept.
Yeah, and everybody enjoys it, and it works out better. And I'm sure you made Paul's life a lot easier too by taking all that on.
I don't know. You nailed it. You haven't met someone who's more passionate about the business and works harder. So I think no matter what, he he wears the company on the sleeve regardless, but possibly.
Awesome. So obviously you've worked for and with a lot of great companies, a lot of great leaders. Any one or two mentors in particular you want to shout out, and any specific advice you'd received?
Yeah, you've named some of them, but considering how nice they were to give me those gratitudes at the beginning, I'll repeat it. Obviously, I think everybody, hopefully, or most listening, your obvious mentor sounds, I think, what everybody would say, but my father was the hardest worker I've ever met. So I think he, passed that gene down. But Peter McKay, Paul Flanagan, Jimmy Duff on my early days, people like Sanjay Poonen later years at VMware, and all have helped craft very different things. When I think about every one of them, I've been extremely lucky, and not by design. It's actually by fluke, because when I think about my journey and how I landed at every different spot, they all bring very different things to the mix. But there's some of the people I definitely would list as top of my professional mentor list.
That's great. And what about any sales leaders?
Oh, sales leaders. I've enjoyed, I'll duplicate it again. Pete's been great, by the way. For those who don't know, Pete Agresta, he's our CRO. He was the head of enterprise sales for Pure Storage for years. Pete had said something similar about me that I loved about Pete. When I searched for a CRO, when we searched for a CRO, we interviewed, it must have been 50 candidates or more. We wanted that unique mix of someone that's been there, done that on the growth stage, but also has done scale. Because I had spent, luckily, 5 years at VMware, so I saw scale in addition to the 20 years of doing growth stage companies. And it's just different. And coming from scale down is really hard. It's really hard to do what we do. Just the level of detail that you're in is at such a different stratosphere that you need somebody that can do both. So obviously, it's been great working with Pete, having that. Brian McDonough, as I mentioned, is still a friend, somebody I've worked with. And Robert Morellis at VMware was always great to work with. And yes, that's a short list.
Great. What about any advice to your younger self?
Ooh. Yeah. I think, you know what? Somebody today, it's been a busy time here at Nasuni, Ray. So I apologize for, running you around on scheduling. But if you think about what's gone on here, we did a majority investment. We just rebranded the whole entire company. We just finished QBRs. We have a board meeting next week. And this morning we did our second half sales kickoff. So in the kitchen, we had 100 people, and then we had 100 people remote in the sales org going through our second half. And my head of business development, Mike Osotnik, said something I thought was really good. He said, the big picture is just a bunch of small pictures. And he's the king, by the way, king of these lines. So he has one for everything. Sorry, Sot, but you do. You have one of those lines for everything. But I think that's really good, advice, is that I would have told myself to not worry about the big picture so much. I was so worried about the next promotion, the next salary adjustment. I would have stopped and probably thought about, adding to my kind of career and my education and to my learning versus just head down plowing through it. Now, it worked out okay for me, but I think people too often get caught up in what's next. And I would probably do that. I get caught up in money always. I think people do in their younger careers, and that's going to come. If you put your foot in front of itself every day, you get into a good routine, you work hard, and you're a good teammate, the money's going to come more than likely. So Don't infatuate too much about that.
Absolutely. Great call there. So as a reminder for those watching along, feel free to make any comments or especially add on to any of the questions here as well. Certainly a wealth of expertise here with Dave.
Hopefully none of my team chime in here and ask some hard questions, Randy, because Pete, at the second half sales kickoff this morning, I was told, put a picture of you and me on a screen and maybe took a little jab at us. So
all right.
I think you might have told somebody to do some Easter egg questions in here, but we'll see.
There you go. Gotcha. So extra stock options for whoever asks questions. So shifting gears, so kind of on the lead gen side of things, kind of how do you approach kind of lead gen? What are some things you do?
Yeah, we're probably pretty traditional. We do top of funnel is sourced by 4 sources that we track. 35% roughly being channel and alliances. Then we do another 30-ish% through outbound sales development. Another 25 to 30%, although my CMO sandbagged me and signed up for 25. He should have signed up for 30. We're going to adjust that for the second half. For marketing leads, so inbound, and we have an inbound team that handles those. And then we've actually tracked and assigned sales themselves to generate pipeline. Now, it sounds obvious, but a lot of orgs don't do that. A lot of orgs will actually say it's all on marketing and the SDR org. We wanted to make sure we actually set KPIs out there for the field team themselves to be out there networking outside of the work that the partner org's doing for them, the SDR org's doing for them, and the marketing org's doing for them. So probably a pretty traditional stack, but they're the main sources of pipeline that we're using to build.
Gotcha. Great. And then on your kind of sales tech stack, besides the normal LinkedIn kind of Salesforce, things like that, anything else in particular that you're using?
We're doing a lot of, I hope, the best practices. One thing, we did hire a new CMO about almost a year ago. Asim Zahir, for those that may know him out there, he was a CMO for Hitachi Data Systems for quite a while, local person here in New England as well. And he hired a great head of demand generation on Rapid7, Hannah. And they're doing some really good things about modernizing our marketing stack. So, 6 Sense and Hockey Stack, and we use Chorus obviously to record and look at transcripts of calls, looking for value props. Because remember, we're disrupting status quo. We're disrupting an established market, not creating a new market. And so listening to those Chorus calls and looking through the transcripts that they do, and the Zoom calls as well, is really important for us. So, we're probably pretty traditional there, but so far we've enjoyed the intent data that 6 Sense is giving us. That's been a rising star in our lead gen lately.
Oh, awesome. And then with Chorus owned by Zoom Info, then I assume you're leveraging in a lot of their contact expertise and some of the other offerings.
We were Zoom Info customer first, and then kind of decided to go with Chorus at the time with that integration.
Oh, great. And then on the people kind of talent development, obviously is important. You're onboarding a lot of new people. You just started doing, to help with some of the new managers, a buddy to boss program.
Yeah. I think this is one that I struggled with it. I, again, fortunate enough to get promoted pretty quickly as a young professional. So took on management roles probably before I was ready, actually definitely before I was ready. And, the hardest thing that I found, and one of the mentors I mentioned on that list always used to say this, is that you're not going to be their friend anymore. Unfortunately, you can still be friendly and you can still be a great teammate. But you gotta go from buddy to boss, and being respected for the decisions you make is more important. And so what we did recently was a new program called Buddy to Boss. It's for first time managers, and it's training them on how to try and keep that teammate mentality, but to also make the right decisions. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being liked, right? Yes, I sure hope if you do things right, you are liked. But it's about making the right decisions for the people and for the company. When you ask why we're special, you look at us. We weren't one of those people that made decisions and got way in front of our skis and then laid off a bunch of people. We've been lucky to not have to lay off people, and that was conscious. We didn't want to get in front of our skis. Those were conscious decisions that we made. And so, learning that process versus just always saying yes or wanting to be their friend and making the decision based on that factor is an important trait. And it's hard. It's really hard for people to make that disconnect. But yeah, we have a full sales enablement team in the sales org under Pete's leadership that do things like the Nasuni Sales Academy. I think that's really important. If people aren't doing that, that's making sure you bring all the new hires once a quarter in person. don't be doing all this remotely and virtual. Get them to come in and feel the culture, ask questions of the exec team. I go in and sit down and hang out with them. I think that's really important. And then we have a team that follows up with them. How's your pipeline doing every month? And we're measuring that scorecard every month and making sure that they're getting what they need. Because it can be very isolating for a field team.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then with your kind of the sales engine relationships must be pretty important. You've got some of the larger cloud hyperscalers, you got the channel partners, and then your enterprise team, presumably with the end user executives as well.
Yeah. So we, when you think about what we do, because we're disrupting a legacy market that's been around, the director of infrastructure or the VP of infrastructure at, name it, big enterprise, because we do go after mid to large enterprise only, not SMB companies, are comfortable with their NetApps or their Dells. They've been doing it forever. It's just not going to work in today's scale and locations. And you need a cloud model. You need something that can scale across the globe. You need better durability, better security, a bit more nimbleness. You need it ready for AI. It's just not going to work. So you have to do something, but it's much easier to kick the can down the road, right? And actually, Pete said today, he encouraged our sales team at the kickoff to read one of our favorite books. Both of us, not even talking to each other, said The Jolt Effect was one of the best sales books out there in the last few years, because it teaches you how to sell against the status quo, the real competitor. It's not really
Matt Dixon. We had him on last year.
Yeah. Oh, nice, awesome. Yeah, I think for us, that's exactly what we go through. 80% of our close loss, is actually to status quo. It's not to some competitor that we all infatuate about every day. We probably spend too much time on those competitors and not enough time on the status quo. So long-winded answer to, yes, we have to have a field team that is going direct to that person to try and convince them that this is the way. But then we heavily leverage the channel partners out there. So Presidio, Trace3, SHI, CDW, to help us build some reputation there, right? And to introduce us to the right people, for sure.
Awesome. And then as you're kind of leveraging these relationships and your kind of selling process, and I assume the concept in terms of value comes into play with your kind of selling proposition as well, right? If they're going to spend X amount on you, what's the return and value ROI that they're going to get?
Yes, sir. So we have a business case step in our sales cycle. It's kind of right after qualified plus. It's a key part of what we do. So when you move to the cloud for this piece of infrastructure, we save anywhere from 30 to 60% from what you're doing today. So it is absolutely a key part of our sales pitch. And just today at the kickoff, we reviewed how to do it properly. We have an online calculator. We use HighSpot to then build the proposals and send them out. So business value and ROI is a key part of our sales cycle. A lot of people don't believe it. So we actually go through a workshop where our buyer inputs everything they're spending today. Remember, we're lucky in a way, right? We're not establishing some new category. We don't have to get a new line item built. We're actually stealing from a line item that's already there. And so what we do is we go in and say, what are you spending on NetApp? What are you spending on Commvault? What are you spending on network acceleration? Here are all the things we can collapse in the cloud with our platform, and you're going to save 30 to 60%. And they've been part of the process, so it's not like us just coming over the top trying to convince them of it.
Very, very compelling for sure. And then in terms of the kind of functions on the go-to-market side, sales ops kind of was involved years ago, but now the whole kind of sales ops rev op function is really kind of a competitive weapon in terms of your go-to-market engine, I'd imagine.
Yeah, most definitely. So when Paul said, "Hey, Dave, congrats, CRO role," we won't call it CRO role. I think what we called it was the Chief Commercial Officer, because he said sometimes the CRO role might not sound like you also own marketing. But he said, "Congrats, you have this." I said, "Paul, the first thing I need to do is hire a VP of RevOps." I was lucky to see that excellence at VMware and at Veeam. Those two companies I thought did a phenomenal job of RevOps and sales ops. You probably know the gentleman, Austin Martin, who did it at VMware and did it at Veeam. I learned a lot from his team. He had some great people. My marketing ops person was great at both those companies. And so I essentially tried to replicate that. And so I hired a VP of RevOps, Darlene Grant, no relationship, promise, but also local, great experience. She was a salesperson, came up through that ranks. I think that's really important because they have empathy, again, for what the salesperson's going through when it comes to comp plans and quotas and pipeline builds. And so we built out that team. So we have essentially a RevOps person for each function. So RevOps person for the new name side of our business, the logo land business, the expand business, and then a partner ops person to help with the ops. And that's just, to me, it's game changing. If you don't have, I wouldn't hire a sales org before I would hire the RevOps almost first. You need to get ahead of that data. You don't want your sales team getting bogged down in that kind of data driven. Sometimes you can get a hybrid person that can do a lot of this as a sales manager, but I don't think it's the best use of their time.
Yep, absolutely. So time flies when you're having fun here. So you've been amazing. Lots of great nuggets, lots of great advice here. So thank you so much. And for those that asked the questions, thanks. Thank you to Sandler for being our sponsor. And anybody that's not joined Sales Community, feel free. Tucker has the link up there. And next week, we're going to have Dave Kronk, who's SVP at Tricentis. So it'll be an awesome topic there, talking about expanding for international sales. So everybody have a great week. Happy selling, and look forward to continuing to watch your amazing growth there, Dave.
Thank you, Randy, and any SDR leaders out there. We're a great place to be.
There you go.
Take care.